let's stay with materials again. This is the 5th part of this 3D Studio Max 2020 House T visualization series, and what I want to do is add some materials for the doors here, give a bit more life to the floor. It's quite flat and dull at the moment, and we're going to go into the lower level of the building and look at a different concrete material, and I'll show you how you break off materials. So also, while we're upstairs as well, we'll add some chrome to this handrail here and the window frames, and we'll also add some general materials on the outside of the building as well. So what I'm going to do is clone this rendered frame window so I can compare it to the next render. So we'll clone that, and we can minimize it so we can bring it back later. Okay, so the floors could do with a bit of life. So let's have a look at the sample. Okay, so what we'll do is we'll add some reflection to this, not hugely strong. Let's say strength of 0.4 for that. Okay, now we're not seeing much in the way of reflection there. We're just seeing these tiny little white glints, and that's because the roughness is 0, so it's a very glossy material. If we make the roughness 0.2, then we'll see a lot more life added to that material. Now these will create soft reflections. These do take a bit longer to render. Just be aware of that. The more reflective materials, the longer it takes to render. Okay, now I wouldn't want necessarily the walls to be reflective as well, so let's duplicate the floors material and take off and rename this to wooden walls. So we'll take away the reflection for this one and the roughness. Okay, I can just see the wooden walls in the corner of the view here, and I'll assign that material instead. So we've got two versions. One that's got reflections is on the floors, one without reflections on the walls. Okay, let's take this material and we'll call this silver. Could be chrome, and we'll use one of the presets for this, and we've got metals down here, silver. Okay, stick a background on that and you'll see that it's highly reflective, and if I select the handrail there and assign the material, and also to these window frames, I'm going to have chrome silvery metal window frames. Okay, outside the building I just want some neutral grey, so I'm just going to copy the white and just rename this to grey, give it a different colour. Okay, let's make it fairly dull grey, and if I click a couple of times there, I've got control of the road outside, and I can assign that grey to the road. Okay, all good so far. The doors, these are going to need a wooden material, but with a different pattern to them. So let's take the wooden walls one, and we'll just call this doors. Okay, but here we want to swap the picture. Okay, so the base color, we're going to change this JPEG for this one. Okay, if I view that, you'll see it's a pretty large JPEG. I don't think you can zoom in on these. Yes, you can. Yeah, so there you can see the grain. Very realistic. It is basically just a photograph of a very large piece of veneer. Okay, the size of that, it's 1024 pixels wide by 2048 high. Okay, so remember that that's a 1:2 proportion. Okay, we've got a few objects that make up the doors. We've got 6 in actuality. So we've got 6 door objects. Let's assign that material to all of them at the same time. Okay, I don't need to keep this viewport shaded anymore. I can put it back to wireframe. Same with the top view. Okay, we just needed it to help us orientate ourselves. Okay, but we've still got the 6 objects selected, so let's UVW map them all at the same time. So modify, UVW map. Notice it's all just coming down vertically at the moment, so we want box mapping. We don't want to use real world size. We can start to see the grain appearing now. Okay, and for this one we want a kind of a fairly tall box, so it'll be, let's say, 1.2 length, 1.2 width and 2.4 height. So if I activate this and move the icon out of the side, you can see the shape of it there. So it's 1.2 by 1.2 by 2.4. Okay, remember to close your mapping strip there, otherwise your mapping's at risk. Okay, so I've done the chrome, we've done the doors, we've adjusted the floor material. So that's going to look far more interesting when we do our render. But I'd like to go into the ground floor next. Okay, we haven't got a camera down there, so let's create a camera for the ground floor. So a camera, a target camera, and the room at ground floor starts in this corner. Okay, so I'll look at the shelf. We have the dining shelf here, and activate your camera view, but choose the different camera. We've got camera 2 now, and if you pan in this camera view, it keeps the camera on the target level. Okay, so I can see there. I could do with moving that round back round a little bit and move the target around. I'm seeing quite a lot of the side wall. Oops, picked up an object there. Okay, probably just go with that. Okay, it's this object that I'm kind of interested in, because it wouldn't be panelled in the same way as the concrete walls are. Okay, but how do you choose a part of an object to receive a material? Okay, so let's put this back to, I think this was the front view. Okay, and zoom in a bit closer. Okay, this is the shape of the shelf, the dining shelf. Okay, so what I want to do is break off the front part of that object. So firstly you select the object, modify it. Okay, it's had some mapping applied, but we can drop back to this level. This gives us control of the actual geometry. So if I use the face level, so I'm going to select just some of the faces. Okay, if I try and pick now, it ends up picking way too much. Okay, if I change to a softer window and start that window off the screen, if I start below the object, then it's only the complete objects that were inside that window that get selected. So you can see I've got control of just the window. So when you hold the Alt key, it goes into a minus selection. Okay, with the Shift key, you're adding to the selection. Okay, so Alt is take away, Shift is add. Okay, and then in the modify panel, looking for the detach command, and we can give this another name. So let's keep the naming in the same kind of format. So it'll be layer colon, and let's just call it shelf. Okay. Remember to close the previous object properly, otherwise you're kind of leaving it kind of stuck at this selection level. So you close that, click on UVW map, and that's it back at its top level. Okay, so this is the object now that we're interested in, the shelf. Go to the materials editor and let's use the concrete as the base material. Okay, I'm going to rename this to concrete shelf. I don't want a bump map, so I can cancel that by either right clicking and clear, or you can drag a no map onto it. Okay, and now I'll swap the bitmap out of the base color. Click the name of it. Okay, this is the concrete I want to use this time. Okay, it's a much more kind of general appearance on this concrete. It's just rough concrete, but a huge photograph of concrete. Okay, click open. We'll assign that to that object. Well, we'll go back to the parent level. That's what I generally do. Then assign it. So notice it's gone a little bit darker. Okay, but the mapping needs to be added afresh. Okay, breaking it off the previous object, it broke off before it had mapping. So we need to UVW map it again. Okay, and real world map size will be okay. I'll just leave it at that, but it wants to be box. Okay. The concrete stairs in the building, we've got those showing up on an object called floor concrete. They could receive that concrete as well, and with the same mapping. Box mapping. Okay. So we're nearly ready to kind of start doing some more final renders now. We've got the materials we want and everything. Let's jazz things up here a little bit. Let's have a brushed metal worktop. Okay, that needs mapping. Real world will suffice, but box. And then let's have a reflective, a shiny mirrored upstand there. We could use the chrome again on that. Okay, now I've got some objects that we can add to the scene to make it a bit more interesting. Okay, so when you're pulling in objects from different files, you merge them. If it's a 3ds Max file already, you merge it. If it's an other type of file, you import it. Okay, so file, import, merge. Okay, these extras you'll find in the description for these videos. Okay, so I'm going to bring in the shelf chairs because these come down and sit underneath this shelf, and I've also got some bamboo. So okay, that. These are set up to be in the right position, but if you wanted to, you could open. These are grouped objects, so you click on an object, group, open, and that gives you access to the components. Grouping is very good in 3D Studio. Makes it very easy to work with. So what we'll do here is we'll set the render up to do a 4-minute render. We'll not sit and watch the video all that time, okay, but it'll be a 4-minute render, and we can stop the video and start it on either side of the rendering. But I just want to show you how you change the quality level for the rendering. So it's in render setup, ART renderer, take the quality level up, but then I usually decide on how long I want to leave it. So I said 4 minutes. Okay, and it'll just try and get as high as it can. It'll get as close to extra high as it can. Won't get anywhere near it. It'll probably be more like medium and a bit in 4 minutes. Okay, but I also need to change the file name because this is my downstairs view. Okay, so that one was living space. I'll call this one dining space. Okay, we'll use a TIFF file again. Okay, and then hit render. Oh, now this is much further down in the body of the building. So let's just see what happens if we render just now. Let it start for a second and just watch the render. It's going to be way too dark. We're much further down. The light hasn't got a chance to penetrate in here. Okay, so you can see it's virtually pitch black down there. Okay, so this is where we change the exposure control to leave the camera open for longer. Okay, so it's rendering, exposure control, and let's take it down to say 8. Okay, hopefully that gets remembered, and then hit render again. We'll just watch it for the start and then the video will get paused. Okay, what a massive difference that makes. Maybe a little bit too much, 8 there, probably 9 would have been okay. But we can see the reflections now working. We're getting reflection in that panel and we're getting reflection down on the floor as well. This lighter area is getting reflected in the ground. Okay, but we'll pick up the video once this render's had 4 minutes to go. Okay, the 4 minutes is very nearly up, and we can see the render isn't absolutely perfect yet. There's still quite a lot of speckles especially in the soft reflection areas. We can see this little speckles here. Okay, but time would deal with those. We're getting a very bright external view there, which is kind of realistic. If you tried taking a photograph in a room that's dark, that has a single window, that's kind of what it looks like. Cameras aren't the same as our eyes. Our eyes adjust and we don't get that kind of effect, but with cameras we do. So that's looking pretty good. Looks quite realistic, quite authentic to the original building. A wee bit of improvement could be made with this material mapping here. It's not quite sitting the way I'd like, but we'll leave that just now. Okay, let's go back to the first floor. So we would go back to camera 1, and I'd just like to show you something a wee bit interesting that you can do with materials, and it's sometimes called opacity mapping or cutout mapping. So the doors at the moment look solid, okay, but watch what happens if we include a cutout map as well. So we've encountered the bump map, which is the texture. So go to the doors material and back to the top level, and I'm looking for the cutout map. Okay, here it is here. So let's put in a crazy cutout map so you can see the effect. Okay. Now that might not show up in the viewport just yet, because you can only show one map at a time. Either it's going to be the diffuse map or the bump map or the cutout map. So if we want to see just what happened with the cutout map, we tell it to show this map instead. Okay, let's just do a few seconds of the render just so you can see how this looks. Anywhere there is black should be transparent. Anywhere that's white would be solid, and greys give you semi-transparency. Okay, so we go to the render setup, change the file name back to living space. Living space. Okay, and let's render that. Remember, we're on a 4 minutes setting now for this as well. But this will look quite crazy. opacity mapping is great fun. It's extremely useful for mesh materials. We left the exposure control too low as well, didn't we? So we'll stop that. Okay, let's just deal with the exposure control. So rendering exposure control, I think something like 11 might be a bit more appropriate now. Let's have a look. That's quite crazy, seeing straight through these holes in the doors. So there's not modelled holes, it's just completely ignored the material wherever it's found a black circle. It's think of different uses for that. It can be very, very useful. Okay, let's switch that off. We don't want to render with those maps. Okay, I think the exposure control is a little bit, could do with being a wee bit higher. I think 12 would do it. Okay, and we adjust the material to get rid of the cutout map. So we just drag one onto it. Okay, we want to see the finished object. Okay, now in the extras file, if we import whatever's left, if we merge the other items, okay, there's a rogue. I think I missed that one out by accident. Recliners, table and chairs, and I've also got some lights. Okay, it's found duplicate materials in the ones that are coming in, so we'll use the scene material. Okay, but you can see we've got some lights here. These are photometric lights. Okay, they're spherical ones. Okay, so the light's coming out in all directions, but the blue is the range of the light. That is the 2 meters. That's the intensity limit of the light. Have a look at some other videos of mine that'll cover lighting in more detail. I don't want to go into artificial lighting too much at this one. Okay, but we will now go for a final render on this, and I'm going to set the render to be a 10-minute render, so we get a much more decent quality. So render setup, ART renderer, we'll give it 10 minutes this time. Okay, and we'll hit render. It should save over the same file name. Okay, and once it starts rendering, I'm going to pause the video.